just like to welcome Kieran Murphy from St. Pat's in Navan and Sinead McDonald from Holy Faith Clontarf. Welcome, guys.
Hi.
How you doing?
So this evening we're just going to talk through about blended learning and contextualizing that in the classroom. So would you like to start, Kieran, about telling me about your journey, maybe the platform you're using and how things are progressing so far?
Yeah, so about 2 years ago now, our school invested in a platform called Schoolwise, which I think maybe is one that not everyone's not familiar with. It's a virtual learning environment, and essentially every class and every teacher in the school gets set up on a system. It's essentially, it is very, very similar to Google Classroom, except that instead of having every teacher set up their classes and every student adding to it, it syncs with either ePortal or Facility or VSware, and it creates the classes for you. Now, our plan at the time was to maybe start with the first years and then to kind of organically work it through. Yeah. And then the lockdown happened, and very, very quickly we had to try and just upskill the teachers and the students with it. And as a result, I was lucky in that I had been kind of using it a little bit with transition years. And but overall it was very, very successful, and we were actually lucky that we had it, because without it I think it would have been difficult to deliver content to the entire school in the event of a lockdown, and scrambling to set up different classes in Google Classroom. So we were lucky from that point of view, but that's kind of where we're at the minute. And now obviously because of that we are using it more widely than we would have originally, but I think it's working quite well so far.
Very good. And Sinead, in the Holy Faith, how are things working out there? What are you using?
We're using Office 365, and it was introduced to the school probably about 4 or 5 years ago. There was a basic introduction done for staff, and really it was only staff that used it initially for OneDrive, for storage space and things, to get used to it. Then a group of teachers did a digital leaders course in the school over a 2-year period, with a view to then expanding that out to other staff members. And I signed up for that. So I was using it with a number of my classes. We were kind of given freedom to use it with our classes if we felt comfortable using it. So I started to use Teams and OneNote and forms and things like that with my own classes, with LCBP and with CY and art. And then year before last, I signed up for the PDST's ePortfolio project. So last year I introduced that. With my TYs, I moved a section of what would have been a paper portfolio, their big CY folder, as we called it, and we moved parts of that digitally last year onto OneNote. So I started with moving their work experience reports and their GOSHGA and their social justice onto a digital platform, and the rest was still being done in their folder, with the aim to grow it slowly. But then again, lockdown happened and I had them putting everything in. A lot of other teachers had started to use it, quite a few hadn't really. But again, we were thrown into a situation where everybody had to. But there were certainly large numbers of students that had used it because of the variety of teachers. They were already in Teams with some teachers, and so Teams wasn't really new for a lot of students, but OneNote was. The idea of uploading their work to teachers was new. They've been able to communicate with teachers and receive work from teachers, but them giving work back was very new to them during lockdown. And now at the moment we are full embracing Teams, because we have a situation where we have too many students in classrooms. So we have overspill, and we're live streaming from classrooms. So teachers are using Teams meetings and to live stream. So we're upskilling very quickly.
Excellent. That sounds very interesting. And just going back to the digital portfolio there, that sounds excellent. How is that progressing?
Yep, this year I have moved the whole thing digitally. So I have shared work in the content library with students in OneNote. Again, last year I did the same, but it was a lot less that I was sharing. This year I moved all my tutor booklets and everything into OneNote, and I've shared all of it with them. And then I've created folders for them and pages for them that they can see what they have to upload, and it's kind of tailored for them to see where to put things, where I want them kind of ordered.
Excellent. And how has that been from a student's perspective then? Have they found that very difficult to transition across to using a digital portfolio as opposed to the physical portfolio? Or
Well, I think, well, obviously we're only at the start of the year, so the current TYs, I'm only introducing it to them, but they would have used it with teachers during lockdown. A lot of teachers had started to use OneNote. So even today I had a tutor group and I pulled it up on the screen and they were familiar with it and they understood that they had to upload files and PowerPoints or whatever they produce for their folder. But certainly the group last year, by the end of the year, certainly had got to grips with it much better. And I suppose one of the biggest teething problems was there's a lot of options in Office as to where you can send a teacher work. You can send them an email, you can send them a chat,
Yes.
you can put it in assignments and teams, and to get them all putting it in the same place to understand that actually I want it in OneNote. I want you to create a kind of a portfolio, or like I was trying to describe it like a copybook. It's your little folder, all your work should be in there, and then you'd get a chat with a photograph of their work. So I suppose there's a lot of options for them. They can get the work to you very easily, but to have it where maybe as a teacher you want to confine it and to be able to correct it in that space can take a bit of upskilling for the students to learn how to do that.
Very good. And Kieran, over to you. I suppose one of the advantages maybe of using a virtual learning environment is it allows you to communicate with students, staff, and possibly even parents. How have you found it from that point of view? Has it helped in terms of communicating more effectively with students?
Yeah, well, definitely last year I found that it was, because I actually took over as coordinator last year, but my timetable had already been done. So essentially I didn't actually have much contact with them. So being able to communicate with them via a virtual learning environment was crucial, because otherwise I had to actually physically get to them as well as teaching all my classes well. And I would have found that extremely difficult. So I think as well, it fits in well with the ethos of transition year, where kind of the information's there for them if they want it, rather than you're going in and spoon feeding them. So people will know watching this, like as a TY coordinator, you might get 10, 12 emails a day with different competitions, different opportunities, different placements, different things that are on for transition years. And if you were to physically go to them and give them this stuff all the time, it would be very onerous and probably not possible as well. Whereas having that ability to kind of just put it on a notice board that the lads just got into the habit of scrolling through and checking, like I said, it was self-directed. It was kind of self-motivating. They had to do it. It was there for them if they wanted it. And I kind of felt that it rewarded the students who were there, who were willing to invest a little bit more in that. So I found that was very, very beneficial.
Introducing new technology or new initiatives in any space is difficult. So what drawbacks would there have been, and how did you overcome them?
I suppose one drawback would be, so we don't have devices. We're not like a one-to-one device school, and also like phones for us are completely off the table, so not allowed phones at all. So you're trying to introduce digital technologies, but then there's a limited amount. Now it is improving, but there was a limited amount. So one difficulty was just getting the students to have access to that. And then even at home, the majority were quite good, but we've even found that the access to digital technologies, and especially internet connections at home, was poor. So that was definitely a challenge. Look, that's a challenge in all schools, and I think it's something it's a work in progress in all schools going forward. But to me, that was probably one of the main challenges we had. The students tend to be quite good at technology, and we were lucky we have a good IT program in first, second and third year. So we're inheriting students in transition year who have pretty good IT skills, and they tend to pick things up a lot quicker than us as teachers even. So I think once they have a platform, and if it's consistent and every teacher is using the same platform, then the kids get very, very good at it very, very quickly, I find.
So Sinead, I was just wondering about at the start of TY, when students come into you, do you do a module in terms of upskilling students and teachers to ensure that you're all on the same page?
At the moment, I suppose because it's relatively new for students, most of the students coming in don't have a huge proficiency in using Office 365. They'd have been exposed to it, they would have maybe used Teams and chat and things like that. The intention this year, part of the project I was involved in, was that this year, at the start of the year, we had attended as part of the TY induction to have an IT induction and to take them all in groups, them devices, and work them through that. unfortunately, with the way things are and the social distancing and the whole school being full of bodies, it wasn't possible to give rooms over to do that. So what I'm doing at the moment, TY tutors are spending the first class, and if necessary, the first 2 weeks, like of classes. And all TYs have one tutorial a week for 40 minutes. And so I had mine today, and really that's it. We looked at and how to code, and as I said, I got them to use their devices and how to share work and how to find work. They also do have one computers class a week each, and so the computers teacher is going to kind of through our platform and explain the different functions, because I want them to be able to use other things within it, like I want them to be able to use forms, to do quizzes, or to survey people. I want them to be able to use Sway, to make little videos. So the computer teachers want to introduce those things to them, so that their portfolio isn't just all Word documents. I'm kind of looking for variety and a bit of creativity.
Very good. That's very interesting. So you have one computer class a week for the full TY
For the full year.
Yeah, for the full year, and then separately you have digital portfolio as well.
Well, yes, the digital portfolio falls into their tutorial class. So in tutorial,
right, okay, yeah.
do a number of things, but the bulk of it is about their TY journal and keeping a record and discussing. Like historically, I suppose it would have been a kind of a discussion class, and you'd be chatting about what they'd done, and they'd come home and write up a report. Whereas now, because it's moving digital and we can let them have devices, it'll be more about actually producing it in class.
Yeah, so like similar to Sinead, we would also have an IT class for an hour a week, so one period of the timetable for the year. And in the past, that's been split between students doing ECDL, and at risk of ECDL bashing, we also decided to go a different way, because I kind of took the decision that I wanted to focus more on the Google apps. So, for example, for our digital portfolio, or e-portfolio this year, we will be using Google Sites. So getting the students to create their own Google site. So, and then using that to showcase the work that they do digitally throughout the year. Now, while the students might be good with technology and coding, I don't think too many of them will have designed their own website before. So obviously that then becomes a focus for the IT class. So working towards that becomes a major goal of what the IT teacher is trying to accomplish. The other thing actually I did want to say was that I think there is an opportunity for students globally to get certified in Google, so the Google apps. Now I think it's more at the minute based in America, so you can sign up and get a discounted rate that the students then can essentially be part of a plug and play, so they can work through these Google apps, the training in the Google apps at their own pace, and at the end of it become certified, and that would be a huge benefit for them. It's something that I think is on the way to Ireland. I think they are going to look at making that available to students in Ireland. So I would say to watch the space for that, because I think for any Google schools that are out there, that's certainly going to be beneficial, because even if the teacher isn't necessarily proficient in the use of the apps themselves, the students with a set of earphones can work through this at their own pace. And again, it provides for that differentiation, because even though I said that the students are proficient, some clearly are ahead of others. So some might be thinking that organizing a Google Drive folder is the easiest thing in the world, and they can fly through that, whereas others might need a little bit of help in it. So it certainly helps from that regard.
Very good. A big takeaway from me from speaking to both of you has been, how useful you found the digital portfolios. So I suppose would that be something that you'd recommend? You both spoke highly of it to other TY coordinators, maybe who don't have a digital portfolio, or contemplating maybe moving from a physical portfolio across.
Absolutely. I mean, Ciara mentioned earlier that I'd be the same, I couldn't imagine now at this point not having some digital, leaving for communication with the TYs more and more, and moving on to everything into the digital platform. That's where we're communicating and everything. Especially in the current environment, I couldn't imagine not having it, because it's my only method really of communication with all of them at the one time.
Sorry to cut in there, Brendan, but so with we're in an all boys school, and some of the feedback that I get from parents in particular is that they're not as informed as they'd like to be about what TY is like for their sons, because believe it or not, young lads don't like to talk about school too much. So I think having something that like a digital portfolio if the parents are aware that it exists and that they have access to it. So in my case, a website, I can say to the parents, well, if you want to know what your son's transition year is like, go get him to share his webpage with you, and then they're getting a view, a snapshot of what his transition year experience is like. He might not be able to articulate it, but they can look in and they can go through and they can see for themselves. And I think that's amazing.